This presentation is dedicated to Adrian Burton, a devoted community member who passed away on Wednesday, July 10, 2024, at the age of 79. Adrian worked tirelessly for the betterment of the Victor Harbor community. Adrian was a passionate advocate for ethical governance and transparency. He spent over a decade highlighting the controversial Stock Road floodplain land subdivision, where approximately 30 acres of unique floodplain land intended for public trust were included in a subdivision and sold for private profit. Adrian's efforts brought to light numerous issues, including inconsistencies with development principles, restricted access to critical development plans for councillors, and potential misinformation regarding floodplain boundaries. His dedication to the community and insistence on ethical behaviour in local government have left a lasting impact. Join us as we look into this significant community issue that impacts residents and raises ethical concerns. Now, let's join the forum hosted by CEO Victoria McCurdy of the City of Victor Harbor to explore the details.
Before, we did have Adrian Burton has asked to do a presentation to you on his findings. He's done a huge amount of research and investigation into this matter, and it's now his opportunity to present to you his findings.
Along with all residents and ratepayers of Victor, we've all been adversely affected in some way by the Stock Road Saga. It is alleged that about 2/3 of an estimated total area of 12 hectares, which is approximately 30 acres of exquisite and irreplaceable floodplain land that was intended to be entrusted to our council, has been subdivided and sold for private profit. Council have known all along that there's a danger of flooding, and they wrote into the development plan special provisions. The rezoning of the land created about 40 rural living allotments occupying an area of 59.8 hectares. That's about 150 acres. So it was a major development. The plan had four main features. Firstly, define the extent of the floodplain. Pretty sensible. You can't do much until you've defined the extent, until you know where the land is in or out of the floodplain. Was the map consistent with Figure 4? No. Was it consistent with Development Control Principle 1? No. Did it provide a hydrological appraisal defining the extent of the floodplain? No. Was it consistent with Land Division Principle 7? No. Would all floodplain land have been vested to council? No. Was it consistent with Land Division Principle 9? No. But it was used during assessment. Based on what is known, does this map contain data that is contrary to Figure 4? It sure does. Contrary to Principle 1? It sure does. Contrary to Principle 7? It sure does. Contrary to Principle 9? It sure does. The minutes of the January 2000 council meeting record that a councillor asked why copies of a new development plan currently used by staff had not been made available to elected members. He asked, can I have a look at the development plan? And the development plan contains the principles. The answer was no, you can't. Was the decision to approve the land division made within a context in which councillors asked for but were denied access to relevant information? Yes. How could the application have been assessed against provisions, including principles of development control and land division, to which the decision makers had allegedly been denied access? How could they possibly have done it? They didn't know. They didn't know what the principles were. So how would they know whether the map contravened principles? Big decisions were made when they didn't know the boundaries of the floodplain. So they didn't know which land was in and which land was out. When they were denied access to the development plan by a director, were councillors also being denied the key to grasping the significance of the information the map contained? That's the crunch. The Victor Harbor Council advised the then State Governor, Sir Eric Neal, that the 100 ARI flood level, and I quote, will be determined by a hydrological assessment at the time of land division. This is the first map that is accurate. This is a surveyed, proper hydrological assessment. The interesting thing is, it wasn't started until about a fortnight after approval had been given. When finally they did a correct map, they were gobsmacked because suddenly they realised the area of the floodplain was, I'm only using this as a colloquial term, about twice the size what they thought it was. You'll also note that the reserve on that map is lot 45. How could an informed assessment have been undertaken of the development application and approval given for the land division when the decision makers allegedly did not have access to all relevant and necessary information, including the basic information that defined the extent of the floodplain? Just because court action may be the only route by which a decision of council, and remember this was acted on more than 15 years ago, can be legally set aside, that does not necessarily mean the decision was made by well-informed councillors, was consistent with council policy, was undertaken via a sound and appropriate process, was in the best interests of the community and the environment, was understood and supported by the majority of the community, and or was ethically acceptable. Issues raised within this report have not been before a court of law, may become a strong community issue in addition to being a council issue. Yes, it may concern 2 or 3 locals, plus thousands of voters at the forthcoming council elections. This is no longer the exclusive domain of council. This is now a community issue.
Perhaps it may be the most expedient course of action for a community to adopt a circle the wagons attitude and possibly turn a blind eye as efforts might be made to sweep an inconvenient truth under the carpet. That might save the community money. Let's ignore it. Let's not take any questions. I've answered that question. That's irrelevant. Perhaps what's ethically sound may not be the easiest thing to do, and this is not going to be an easy problem to solve. But I don't believe we should be just lifting the carpet and sweeping it under. Perhaps the genie is out, and it may be time for discussion. How many times did Peter, wherever you are, Peter, ask for mediation, ask for discussion? No. There will be no discussion. Now, I think, is the time for discussion. Now is the time for mediation. Now is the time for people to sit down, respectfully talk to each other, because it's not going to go away. Thank you.
April 2013, I forwarded a 3.5-page written submission to Council in which I expressed my concern that I'm only being given the option of either supporting or not supporting the concept plan as presented. In my opinion, this is an unnecessarily restrictive and unfortunate position in which to be placed. I now find myself placed in a position of feeling compelled to vote against something for which I'm fundamentally in favour because of what I believe to be the inordinate cost involved and the lack of other options from which to choose. I was a member of a small local committee who made the effort and took the risk of organising what has become known as the Middleton Public Meeting on the 25th of August 2013. The 300 people who attended soaked up a PowerPoint presentation by the experienced pool and recreation centre architect and builder, Mr. Stephen Johansson from Sydney. Amongst other possibilities outlined, he suggested he could provide the same facilities that were contained in the concept proposal for about $4 million less, but with an additional fully integrated 50-metre outside pool included in the price. Yet when the tendering process for design was undertaken, Mr. Johansson's application was not even included in the 5 that were shortlisted. I understand it has subsequently become known that Mr. Johansson's company could provide the same facilities as in the current FRAC proposal for about $3.5 million less, plus include an additional separate purpose-built gymnasium and fitness centre, 2 indoor multi-purpose sports courts that are capable of being adapted on demand to an entertainment or conference centre, a spa, sauna and steam room, and a bowling alley. I would have thought such a situation should be well worthy of more detailed consideration.